Okay, hi, my name is Angelo Cruz, and today I'm going to be talking about my research essay, which was done on discrimination. Most of my points in this talk about in the workplace, but I do also talk about the military, and then some of the points that we learned in Dr. Price's capstone class, which is who counts as human. So like I said, for this research essay, it is for who counts as human. So the reason I chose discrimination is because when we talk about a topic such as that, I think discrimination plays a huge part in it. And as you'll see in my presentation, some of the main points to talk about are the Equal Pay Act of 1963, the Civil Rights Act of 1963, and the Age Discrimination and Employment Act of 1968. And then I also have a few case studies I'm going to talk about, and then also a few court cases that go along with my points. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Equal Pay Act of 1963. In 1961, Esther Peterson became head of the Women's Bureau in the Department of Labor. Once she became named as that, she started a campaign to present the Equal Pay Act to Congress. With the help of a lot of people, including President John F. Kennedy, she was able to submit the bill, and it was passed on June 10th, 1963. The bill stated that equal work deserves equal pay and can't be judged off the basis of age, sex, or race. The next one, like I said, the Civil Rights Act of 1963, same year as the Equal Pay Act. It was started by President JFK himself, and during this time he was actually assassinated, so his successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, took over the campaign for him. He was successful in getting the bill signed, and it was signed into law on July 2nd of 1964. Title VII of the bill declared that discrimination for any reason on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or any national origin was illegal in the United States at that time. So the last one, pretty simple, Age Discrimination and Employment Act of 1968. This act pretty much has brought an end to any discrimination for any employee between the ages of 45 to 60. And after this, I'm going to jump to one of my first case studies I'm going to talk about, which deals with actually age discrimination in the workplace. So this study was done by Richard Johnson and David Newmark. The title of their study was Age Discrimination, Job Separations, and Employment Status of Older Workers. What they were doing in their study is they were interviewing employees that were either fired, let go, or left their job, and they were looking at the age of the employees, and the age range was from 50 to 60. They found that 7 people that they interviewed were actually cases of age discrimination in their workplace. And these 7 people, they talked to them, and what they found for this is people who go through age discrimination are, 1, more likely to leave their jobs because they don't feel comfortable there from the discrimination. 2, they're replaced by younger employees right before they're about to retire, and which is something called the retirement provision, so these people don't get their retirement pension. And then 3, they're forced to leave before they're even retired. So a lot of these people were working for companies up until their 50s or 60s, and then were never given a chance for a retirement package. 7% of the sample reported age discrimination, and one of the things in their study that they found was that age discrimination is very overshadowed by race and sex discrimination in the workplace, so it's not very talked about. The next case study that I found was done by Elizabeth, Deidris, Anna Barsky, and others. The title of their study was The Existence and Impact of Everyday Racial Discrimination in the Workplace. What they were studying, and their hypothesis was for their study, was that black employees received much more discrimination than white employees. So what they did was they pulled data from 2 sources, the first one being the Ehrlich and Lorcom survey in 1993, and the second one being the Department of Defense sexual harassment survey in 1995. Both of these surveys proved their hypothesis, showing that black employees at the time were receiving much more discrimination than white employees. And it also, what their study did was raise the question that maybe people who were doing research on discrimination should change what they consider to be discrimination. So kind of not changing the definition of it, but changing the way people look at it. And also I found in this study that black people in the military also received much more discrimination than white people in the military, which was kind of interesting because we watched that video in class here on not only sex discrimination, but discrimination as general in the military, and it's a very pressing issue. Okay, the next case study I came upon was done by Deanna Burgess and Eugene Borgita. Their title was Who Women Are and Who Women Should Be. What they were focusing on was the role of gender stereotyping and sexual harassment amongst women in the workplace. And they said that they found that women who don't follow the norms of femininity in the workplace were usually the ones who were treated in a negative way. So they believe that sexual harassment is based off gender stereotypes, and they also relate this theory to the theory of misperception. And in the situation of discrimination, misperception in the workplace is pretty much like a male believing that the female was asking for it by the way she dressed, the way she talked, the way she acted towards him. And based off of this, they found that males who believe that are typically the ones who commit sexual harassment the most, and the more that they get away with it, the more they just continue to do it, which is pretty prevalent issue for that. Okay, and this was actually probably one of the most interesting case studies I did because it's based on a personal opinion, but there is factual data in it. It's done by John Donahue, and his title for his study was Prohibiting Sex Discrimination in the Workplace. What he found was that even though women are equal in the workplace now, they still do not feel comfortable in their jobs. He did a survey of 483 women, and he found that 55% of them said that they do not feel like they're ever taken seriously in what they do in their job, and they just don't feel comfortable at all. So he goes into detail about some of his personal opinions about how they should take this into matters of higher ups such as HRs or bosses, and he believes that there should be a law written in that those who discriminate, their consequences is either they get demoted in their jobs or ultimately they get rid of them from the job. And what he believes that would come from this is that for companies it would be a rise in social welfare and social benefit, because for those companies it would invite more women to come work for them rather than push them away. And for the women that are already there, they would want to stay and not leave. So where the social benefit for the company comes is that they're not losing employees, they're gaining, so they're making more money for themselves. Like I said, from that it would just cause more of a safe work environment for these employees. Okay, so jumping on to some of the court cases I came across that dealt with discrimination. The first one was County of Washington versus Gunther. And what this dealt with was a female prison guard by the name of Alberta Gunther. She took Oregon County Jail to court along with two other of her employees because they were making the women, in this prison there was male guards, female guards, and there was male prisoners and female prisoners. And the male guards would obviously watch the males and the females would watch the females. But they were making the females also do clerical work. So they were doing more work than the males, and they were also paying them lower wages. So she took them to court based off of the Title VII sex discrimination. And what they actually ruled was that they denied it because the sex discrimination claim could not be brought under Title VII unless it would satisfy the Equal Work Standard of the Equal Pay Act. So pretty much they told them, you guys are still doing the same amount of work and you guys signed a contract for this pay, so there's nothing they can do about it. The next one, which is actually a very big court case, you guys have probably heard about it before, is Brown versus Board of Education. It became known as the most important political, social, and legal event in America's 20th century. It overturned the ruling of Plessy versus Ferguson, which was in 1896, which the ruling of that was the famous quote, separate but equal. In the court ruling of Brown versus Board of Education, the court ruled that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal, so it got rid of all of that. And then ultimately at the end of this court case, the Supreme Court prohibited racial discrimination on any basis in the United States. So from everything I just talked about, from the case studies, the court cases, there has been advances into getting rid of discrimination in the workplace. But when I was doing some research, I found a setback that many people forget about, and it's called immigration law. In the 19th century, Chief Justice Melville Fuller created immigration law, and pretty much what it was to get rid of people who were considered aliens, or their race was considered undesirable. So this falls heavily on Asian people that I found, and there's a court case. It's Chan Ping versus United States, and Ping was a legal citizen in America at the time. He was living in San Francisco. He went overseas, back to his homeland, got the paperwork, came back, had every paperwork to return to America, and ultimately, because of immigration law, they were able to tell him he couldn't come back in. And what that is called plenary power doctrine. And what this was for is for Congress. Pretty much the power they have over their mission over aliens is absolute. So they pretty much can do whatever they want. If an immigrant goes home and tries to come back, it was at this time, he was not able to come back because of this plenary power doctrine. So to kind of wrap up everything, I just want to talk about what we learned in class also. I thought the reluctant fundamentalists, real bad Arabs, were very powerful. Well, the book was very powerful, the film was very powerful when talking about discrimination. Because it shows, especially for those two films, the Muslim population, how heavily they're discriminated against in our views. So in the Reluctant Fundamentalists, we learn about the character changes and how he is living the American dream, and then after the attacks of 9/11, the views of the American people change him, and ultimately at the end of the book, he's forced to leave his job and return to his homeland. So just what I was talking about right there, with the Equal Pay Act, Civil Rights Act, he just kind of got thrown out the window. And then with Real Bad Arabs, I felt, once I watched that video myself, personally, my eyes were open to a whole new opinion, because, you know, we sit here, we watch these movies that depict terrorists and Muslim people, and you don't really see Muslim people in comedies or romantic movies. They're always playing a angry person or a terrorist. That's just how it is. As far as solutions, in my opinion, I think Donahue's law would work great, not only for the company, but like I said, the employees themselves. Also, I think the employers, and the law should just be more aware of the situation. I think it's not talked about as much as it should be. And then finally, I just think it's a very underreported situation, especially employees. There needs to be a system where employees feel more comfortable to report the situation. Thank you for your time.